I think we're live.
It's good. Oh, hi there.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Steve Sosna.
I'm Al Roker. I'm Chris Cimino.
And we are here for your first Google Hangout chat here. And thank you for joining us. This is the first one ever, so don't judge us too much. We'll be taking feedback afterwards and trying to improve these, but it's a good way to get started to interact with you. And today we wanted to cover topics like Hurricane Sandy.
Right, we're coming upon the anniversary in just a week or so I think that's still on a lot of folks' minds in terms of going back in a year. Where have we come since that year, and do we have to worry about another Sandy in the near future?
Right, and we'll also be talking about why this hurricane season was a dud. You heard all the predictions back in April and May that it was going to be a blockbuster season, and really not a whole lot to talk about. Crickets.
No, and there were a lot of different reasons that we're looking at that might have been the cause for that. So again, it sort of proves long-range forecasting still has a long way to go to be completely accurate, but at least I think fortunately most people are happy that this was a quiet hurricane.
Right.
But if you have any questions, we want to hear from you. I'm checking the monitor here, so if you could please type them in and give us a go, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them and give you an idea of where we're heading. Some folks you might be interested about the winter season, maybe more questions about global warming and impact on things like Sandy, the winter season, how we feel about that here in the Weather Center compared to what maybe the National Weather Service is predicting as we go into the winter season. So anything we're open for. You want to talk about the studio, find out some questions. I don't talk about Darlene's wardrobe or shoes, but other than that, I think most things are open.
That'll be Darlene's hangout later on a later date. So first, I guess we'll just get started talking about how Sandy's anniversary is coming up here in a couple of weeks. October 29th is the anniversary, and how we got hit so hard, an unprecedented storm, and probably the storm of our lifetime.
I would think so. I mean, people talk about like to put storms like this in a range of one every 100 years, or it's every 200 years, and the reality is 2 could happen in 10 years, and then this may never happen again for another 150 years. So that makes it a 1 in every 100 year, but probably in our lifetime. And let's hope this is the worst we've seen. And the funny thing about it, I think when people think of tropical storms and hurricanes, this storm was really so devastating to the tri-state, so catastrophic. But actually, technically, when it made landfall, it was barely. It went from a marginal hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, to a strong tropical storm. But yet we hear about Category 4 and Category 5 storms. You think about how devastating that would be. But I think this storm proved, if it comes in at the wrong angle, if you will, towards the coastline, it doesn't matter how really strong the storm is per se by that category. You don't want to get caught up in a category of a hurricane.
Yeah, this was not your typical type of hurricane because it kind of morphed into a storm that had tropical characteristics like you see with hurricanes, and then non-tropical characteristics. And basically, to simplify you, it was a hybrid storm, and it grew up to 800 miles wide.
Yeah, so like 1,100 miles in girth from, I think, Wisconsin to off in the Atlantic Ocean. But again, like you said, it was a combination, really. It became a superstorm because it eventually merged with another storm to the west. So I have never seen anything like that, even on a smaller scale, in terms of that kind of combination. I think the perfect storm, which everybody may have seen that movie, that was one of those scenarios where that happened out at sea, where there was a merging of a tropical system with a subtropical system. Right. But to have something like that happen and then impact such a large populated area, I don't think that's ever happened before.
I still remember, and we'll kind of take you through our personal accounts of the storm. 9 days out, I was actually in Central Park with my father checking out the nice fall foliage, enjoying a beautiful day. Was going through my Facebook feed and saw a model image posted by the European model 9 days out of this megastorm striking New Jersey. And really, that was kind of the story with this storm. The European model, which you heard a lot about last winter, really nailed this storm so far away it did not budge. No. And so we had a pretty good idea of what was going to happen with the storm just by one computer model.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the key. The last thing you said was it didn't budge, it didn't deviate. Sometimes these long-range models, 9 days out, they'll show one scenario. By 7 days out, all of a sudden it's a completely different scenario. Then it goes back to the original scenario 3 days away. This thing was consistent on its track from 8, 9 days out. When you start to see that in a computer model, you really have to start believing that, wow, this is going to play out this way. It was hard to imagine. I mean, typically when these storms come up the coast, they may hug the coast, and then as they get further north into the northern latitudes and even the cooler waters, they tend to veer to the northeast. This thing backed in and made a sharp left turn because of a blocking pattern that was just so perfectly set up. I mean, it created a little narrow bowling alley for this thing to head back inland.
It's very rare to see a storm strike directly on the New Jersey shoreline. There was a major hurricane that struck around Cape May back in the early 1900s, and that's about it. Usually the storms, Long Island, you're susceptible out towards the eastern end of Massachusetts, Cape Cod, Nantucket, places like that, because the coastline actually jets out a little bit further and gets into the steering wind.
Sure. I mean, Long Island's this way, Cape Cod's this way, and the storms are coming this way, so typically you've got more land that could get hit. But New Jersey is typically parallel to the path of the storm. This thing made that sharp turn because it was forced by those steering currents from the blocking ridge east and the other storm with the trough out to the west. It was really... It was a perfect situation if you were trying to get this. Obviously, it wasn't so perfect because of all the damage it did, but that's why I think we're kind of in agreement. This is probably once in a lifetime for us to see something like this.
Chris and I started to hit the alarm button. I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday when we started to see the consistency in the models, and we were up in the newsroom telling them about it, and it was one of those storms where it was a little surreal to see. You see it on the models, and it's showing up run after run, and then you almost start to not believe it's going to happen.
You don't want to believe it now.
It really was the worst case scenario, and you don't see that unfold that often. And so, we continue to watch it, and then by, I think it was Friday or Saturday, we were having conference calls with the different stations on how to cover this storm, and then Saturday, basically we have these models called the spaghetti models, right? And usually it looks just like that, a dinner plate of spaghetti. They're all over the place.
Different paths, right.
And when we came in on Sunday morning, they were stacked.
I've never seen the Hurricane Center uses all those different types of models in-house that they have. And, typically you'd see all the different paths, and one usually deviates, and they crisscross. This thing was concentrated, basically in the same path. All of the models came into agreement.
And I think another topic that we should get into, and especially for you if you live along the coast, Staten Island, Long Island, New Jersey, I mean, this was a storm that really tested your coastline out, and a lot of people in Staten Island lost their homes.
We have a question.
Oh, okay. Hey, well,
Yes, first question.
Can I finish my thought?
Sure, please do.
So the storm surge is obviously the biggest killer in these storms. In fact, 57% of the deaths that happened during Sandy were along the coast. So that's a big topic that we need to talk about.
You knew this one was coming.
Okay.
Was Sandy the result of global warming?
Yes. That's obviously a very common question. We have seen weather patterns change over the last 10, 20 years. Now, can you tie that directly to a storm? There's not a whole lot of science behind that. These superstorms have happened before. It happened back in 1991, and back through unrecorded history. We've only been recording weather in the United States for almost 150
it's really
years.
A small amount of time.
So we don't have a sampling before then. And a lot depends on ocean temperatures and ocean circulations, and we just don't have that documented right now. So you can't definitively say that Sandy is responsible for this storm itself, but you might be seeing some changes in storms and types of storms over the coming years if this trend continues. We have another question rolling in here. Corey says, per Mr. Thrasher's question, do you ever go on a hot streak of weather prediction? Thank goodness we do. Otherwise, it would be a very tough profession.
Well, and we kind of talk about this a lot, and the thing about weather is, you do your job here, we make a forecast, and then we go home, because we're here early in the morning, and then you watch your forecast play out, and it follows you all day, weather.
It can be very painful or rewarding.
Exactly. So if you're going for a sunny day, and all of a sudden, Steve and I are walking around at 12 o'clock, and it's still
I
cloudy.
just got a text from him yesterday. Actually, it was too sunny outside.
I said it's too sunny out.
But it clouded back over,
it did.
so our forecast was... The next question. Do you ever go on a cold streak of weather prediction? Bernie?
Just the opposite.
Yeah.
Oh, there are times, I know I have in the past, what the toughest thing for me over the years, we're back to our cold fronts in spring. This particular area, Long Island, the city, near coastal New Jersey and Connecticut, these fronts would flip-flop back and forth. And that time of the year, we're trying to warm up, but there's still some pretty chilly air up over the North Atlantic and Canada. So depending on which side of the front you end up on, it could be in the 40s with low clouds, or it could be in the 60s to near 70 or 80 with sunshine. And I remember one time forecasting, there was a forecaster, I could mention his name. I was working for a private weather service, and he was over at ABC, Ira Joe Fisher. Actually, he was the weather guy on the Regis Philbin and Cindy Garvey, which was like...
You're taking us way back.
It's way back. Yeah, I'm that old. Shut up. And But I remember this front going back and forth, and every day we thought it would be north, it ended up south of us. Then we'd say it would be south of us, it ended up north of us. So finally, Ira called us on the phone and says, guys, I can't take it anymore. Garbage men are yelling at me on the street. Are you ever going to get this right? And that went on and on for 4 days. So
it's a personal thing. We don't like to get the forecast wrong. No. How far out can you truly predict the weather? That comes from Andrew.
Well, from the standpoint of where we are today with the computer models, and I always answer this question showing that there could be tremendous variation, meaning that tomorrow's forecast and the accuracy for that may be tougher than 7 or 8 days from now. You can maybe, obviously, 7, 8 days from now, there's going to be an Arctic air mass that comes in. So we could tell you, boy, it's going to get brutally cold by the end of the weekend and next week. Tomorrow's snowstorm, we're not sure. It could be snow changing to rain, could miss us altogether. So, it really depends upon the weather situation. But I would say a 5-day forecast, 7-day gets a little marginal, but depends on the trend.
Yeah, and it's funny because the Hurricane Center put out this very pessimistic forecast for above normal hurricanes, stronger than normal hurricanes, and they had a high confidence forecast for that, and it busted. And there were a few things that they overlooked. There were some cold waters off of Portugal, right. And then there were a lot of dust storms over Africa. They did not factor that into the equation, and all the factors that were really pointing to a big hurricane season were overridden by those little variables. And so that's how a forecast can go out the window very quickly, and how this science probably will never be exactly predicted with all the variables that are out there.
You would literally have to be measuring over every square inch of the world what's going on, take that information, and then throw it into these computer models to project ahead. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. But yeah, long range in terms of 30, 60, 90-day, Farmer's Almanac stuff.
I don't
want to poo-poo the Farmer's Almanac, but you have to take all that stuff with a grain of salt. Definitely.